Farret had grown accustomed to being the oddity at the Galactic Academy, surrounded by towering Christians with their crystalline exoskeletons, the phase-shifting, and the telepathic Osirians. He was simply the human, the weak one, the fragile one, the species that had only joined the Galactic Coalition 40 standard years ago. Barely a blink in cosmic terms. But he had never expected Elsa to make it worse. She stood before him in the Academy's central courtyard, her violet skin shimmering in the light of 3 suns, her forearms crossed in what passed for amusement among the Veltari. In her lower right hand, she held something that looked like it had been dredged from the bottom of a forgotten ocean. A sword, or what remains of one. For you, human, Elsa said, her voice carrying that melodic lilt that made every word sound like mockery. A gift from my family's vault. Very ancient. Very powerful. Farret stared at the rusted blade. Orange and brown corrosion covered nearly every inch of the metal. The hilt was wrapped in rotting leather that crumbled at the edges. Whatever this weapon had been, it was now little more than scrap. Behind Elsa, her friends chittered and buzzed with laughter. A Christian named Vorthax clicked his mandibles in a sneer. Even some of the human students looked away, embarrassed for Farret. Thanks, Farret said flatly, taking the sword. It was heavier than he expected, solid despite its decrepit appearance. I'll treasure it always. See that you do, Elsa replied, her eyes glinting with barely suppressed mirth. My ancestors wielded it in the Unification Wars, 3,000 cycles ago. Perhaps it will help you in combat theory class. You could use the advantage. She wasn't wrong. Farret had failed the last 3 simulations, while other species had natural armor, energy manipulation, or enhanced reflexes. Humans had nothing but stubbornness, and the ability to sweat efficiently. Neither quality helped much in zero-gravity sword combat. That night, alone in his quarters, Farret examined the sword more carefully. He ran his fingers along the pitted blade, feeling the rough texture of ancient corrosion. The weapon felt wrong in his hands, unbalanced and awkward. He was about to toss it into his footlocker when something strange happened. A warmth spread from his palm into the metal. Farret jerked his hand back, but the sensation persisted. The sword began to glow faintly at first, then with increasing intensity. The rust didn't disappear, but light emerged from beneath it, tracing patterns along the blade that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Strange symbols flickered into existence, written in no language Farret recognized. Yet somehow he understood their meaning. Courage, persistence, defiance. The light faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the rusty blade. But Farret's hands were trembling. He touched the sword again. The glow returned, stronger this time, bathed his quarters in golden luminescence. The next day, in combat theory, Instructor Quelix announced a practical examination. Live sparring, full contact, with energy dampeners set to painful but non-lethal levels. When Farret entered the arena with the rusted sword at his hip, the laughter was immediate and cruel. The human brings a relic, Vorthax announced to the assembled students. How appropriate, both equally obsolete. Elsa sat in the front row, expression unreadable. She had expected him to hide the sword, to be humiliated by her gift. Instead, here he was, claiming it openly. Farret's opponent was a Cthian warrior named Skesh, whose natural carapace could deflect plasma bolts. When the match began, Skesh moved with predatory grace, her energy blade humming with lethal purpose. Farret drew the rusty sword, and gasps echoed through the arena. It blazed with golden light so bright that students shielded their eyes. The rust remained, but beneath it, the weapon sang with power that made the air itself vibrate. Symbols raced along its length, and Farret felt knowledge pouring into his mind. Techniques, stances, movements refined over millennia. Skesh attacked, and Farret moved. Not with the clumsy desperation of previous matches, but with fluid precision. The rusty blade met the energy weapon and didn't shatter. Instead, it absorbed the blow and redirected it, sending Skesh stumbling backward. Again and again they clashed. Each time, the ancient sword held firm, its light growing brighter with every strike. Farret didn't just defend. He pressed forward, using techniques no human should know, movements borrowed from a dozen martial traditions across the galaxy. The sword guided him, taught him, responded to his touch in ways it never had for its previous owners. When the match finally ended, the arena was silent. Instructor Quelix approached slowly, his sensor stalks quivering with disbelief. That weapon, he said carefully. Where did you obtain it? Before Farret could answer, Elsa descended from the stands, forearms hanging limply at her sides, her expression a mixture of shock and wonder. "It was my gift," she said quietly, "from my family's vault. It had been dormant for 3,000 years. We thought it broken." Quelix's stalks bent toward Farret. "Do you know what you hold, human?" Farret shook his head. "A resonance blade," the instructor said reverently, "forged in the early days of the Coalition, designed to bond with warriors of exceptional potential. They choose their wielders. They cannot be commanded or controlled. They can only be awakened." He paused, studying Farret with newfound respect. "In 3 millennia, that blade has rejected every member of the Veltari bloodline, until today." Elsa approached Farret, and for the first time since he had known her, she seemed uncertain. "I gave it to you as a joke," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to humiliate you, to prove humans didn't belong here." Farret looked down at the sword, still glowing faintly in his grip. "Maybe that's why it chose me," he said. "Humans are good at turning jokes into victories. We're stubborn that way." Elsa's expression shifted, from shame to curiosity, perhaps even respect. "Teach me," she said suddenly. "Whatever that blade shows you, I want to understand." Farret smiled, extending his free hand. "Only if you promise to stop calling me the human, like it's an insult." "Agreed," Elsa said, taking his hand with one of her own. Farret. As they stood together in the center of the arena, the resonance blade pulsed once more, its golden light reflecting in Elsa's violet eyes. Around them, students whispered and pointed, but Farret barely noticed. He had come to the Galactic Academy as humanity's awkward representative, dismissed, mocked, overlooked. He would leave as something else entirely. The rusty sword at his side proved what humans had always known. Sometimes the most powerful things are those everyone else has given up on. Sometimes strength isn't about what you're born with, but what you refuse to abandon. And sometimes the greatest weapons choose not the strongest warriors, but the most determined ones. In the end, that was the most human quality of all. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.